So, we talked a little bit about these tendencies. Won't go too far into this slide, but you can see where the different tendencies are all about these discussion points of how do we organize. What does it mean for our class analysis? Like, what sort of people are we trying to mobilize to form this grassroots organization from? Should it be more centralized or should it be more decentralized? Should it be more focused on workplaces and workers and economy, or should it have a more general sense of communities that might include various identities such as race and gender and various things like that, as well as what's the role of the state in this process of transitioning to socialism? Do we do a worker state? What does that look like? For how long? What does that mean? And what's the proper place of things such as electoralism and mutual aid within this process? All of these different tendencies are basically trying to discuss these important questions that don't really have, fundamental answers yet, right? There's no one true answer to any of these things.
And
so
that's super key to to understand in socialist organizing, right? There's no one true answer, right? We don't know, and depending on your local conditions, depending on the state of the world at the time, where you come down on these these debates can change. A personal example, like I identified myself as a few different things, and they were all pretty staunchly bottom left, identifications with an anarcho-communist, with libertarian Marxist, that kind of thing. But despite my my ideological, orientation being towards that bottom left, when I look at the climate crisis, when I look at less than 8 years before we're really, really fucked, we need some centralization, right? There is no solution, in my perspective, to the climate crisis right now that comes through a million localized anarchist movements, right? I think the scope of the transition that we need to make to avert societal collapse and ecological catastrophe requires a level of centralization that historically I haven't been comfortable with, right? Because I do tend to come down with Bakunin and Proudhon and say, power corrupts. I have real big concerns whether the workers' state will ever allow itself to wither, because the state in and of itself has some control over power. So when it could very much differ on what kind of issue you're talking about, right? Now my climate, when I obviously I worked on Howie's campaign and support and helps, with the eco-socialist Green New Deal, which centers community control to kind of get around this seeming, division between the bottom left ideology that tends to be represented by the Green Party and the centralized economy that is demanded to, address this issue. So it's really important that when we're constantly reevaluating, we're constantly learning, we're constantly growing, we're constantly taking in, new ideas, new critiques, and we don't have a static worldview. Because if you're someone who was around at the origins of the Green Party in the 1980s, at that time a good case could probably have been made for a decentralized solution to climate change. I don't think that case can be made anymore because, 40 years have passed. So we've got to keep evolving, and we've got to keep reanalyzing these things. In terms of U.S. politics, right? Trump threw the whole thing into a spin, and it's still, and so it's hard to do these analyses when the ground is unstable, but we've got to keep doing it, right? How did Trump change the way we organize, right? how does a ever progressively further right Democratic Party change how we organize? So we've got to constantly be, coming back to these debates between the tendencies. We've got to put away our blinders and be able to come in and reevaluate and potentially say, okay, we need to rethink this because this X, Y, and Z have happened that make it no longer possible or make this a better route. And it's why we, I've said the word precarious a few times, right? It's why we have to embrace the precarity. It's why we have to embrace the unknowns about this, because we're talking about a long-term project, right? Even if you're an orthodox Marxist, especially if you're an orthodox Marxist, right? How long is the transitional state? We just don't know. But it's certainly not going to be we'll just put it in place for a few years and then we'll have fully defeated capitalism and all its supporters and we'll be able to wither, right? When we're talking about a transitional state, we're likely speaking generationally, so that society can change. So when we're talking about the project for socialism, we need to be, doing our analysis in the now. We need to be, learning from the past, and we need to be looking to the future.
Absolutely.